There is a threat to your retirement that most people never see coming because they spend all their energy worrying about the wrong things. They worry about the stock market. They worry about inflation. They worry about running out of money slowly over decades. But the thing that most often destroys a lifetime of savings is not slow at all. It arrives suddenly, it costs a staggering amount, and it can drain everything a careful couple spent 50 years building in a shockingly short time. It is the cost of long-term care, and hidden inside it is a single rule, quiet and unforgiving, that can take the house and the savings of a family that waited even one day too long to understand it. I want to tell you about a couple. We'll call them Frank and Rosemary, because those are not their real names, but I have watched this exact story unfold more times than I would ever wish to. Frank and Rosemary had done everything right. They had saved carefully. They owned their home. They had a comfortable nest egg. Enough, they believed, to see them both through a long and dignified retirement, with something left over for their children. And then Frank's memory began to slip, slowly at first, and then not slowly at all. Within a few years, Frank needed a level of care that Rosemary, herself now in her 70s, simply could not provide alone. And when they looked into what that care would cost, the number did not just worry them, it frightened them to their core. Everything they had, and to leave Rosemary, the healthy one, with almost nothing to live on for the rest of her own life. By the end of this, you will understand what long-term care actually is, and why it is so ruinously expensive, why the programs most people assume will cover it often will not, the single rule that traps families who plan too late, and the range of approaches the most careful families used to protect themselves and, above all, to protect the healthy spouse. This is one of the hardest topics on this entire channel, and also one of the most important, because it is the one that quietly does the most damage, precisely because so few people are willing to look at it before it is too late. Now, the same honesty I always give you, and here it comes with a warning. This is a genuinely complex area. The rules vary from place to place, they change over time, and the stakes are enormous. Nothing I say here is a substitute for sitting down with a qualified professional who handles this specific area of planning. What I can give you is the understanding, the shape of the danger, so that you know what questions to ask, and, most importantly, so that you know to ask them early, while you still have choices. Because the cruelest thing about this particular trap is that almost all of the good options disappear if you wait until the crisis has already arrived. So let's start with the thing itself, long-term care. This is the help a person needs when they can no longer fully care for themselves. Not medical treatment for an illness, but daily, ongoing assistance. Help with dressing, with bathing, with eating, with the basic acts of living. It might happen at home, with paid caregivers coming in. It might happen in an assisted living community, or, at the most intensive level, it might mean a nursing home, providing round-the-clock care. And here is the first hard fact. A very large share of people will need some form of this care before the end of their lives. This is not a rare misfortune that happens to other people. It is closer to the norm than the exception. Now the second hard fact, the one about cost. Long-term care is breathtakingly expensive. A year in a nursing home can cost a sum that rivals or exceeds what many people earned in their best working years. And this cost recurs, year after year, for as long as the care is needed, which can be many years. Around-the-clock care for a condition like advanced dementia can run for a very long time. When you multiply that enormous annual cost by several years, you arrive at a number large enough to erase a lifetime of careful saving. That is not an exaggeration. That is simply the arithmetic, and it is the arithmetic that terrified Frank and Rosemary. And I want you to notice something about the shape of this cost, because it is what makes it so uniquely dangerous compared to every other financial risk in retirement. Most retirement dangers are gradual. Inflation eats at your money slowly, over decades, giving you time to adjust. A market downturn hurts, but markets recover, and a careful retiree can wait it out. Long-term care is different in kind. It is a sudden, massive, recurring expense that arrives with little warning and does not relent. And it often arrives precisely when the family is least able to cope. In the middle of a health crisis, when everyone is exhausted and frightened and grieving the slow loss of the person they love. It is the one expense that can take a family that felt completely secure and, within just a few years, leave them with nothing. That combination, enormous size and sudden arrival, is why it does more quiet damage than the market crashes people spend all their time worrying about. Even care provided at home, which people often imagine as the cheaper and gentler option, becomes staggeringly expensive once a person needs help around the clock. Paying caregivers to be present through the day and night, month after month, can cost as much as a facility, sometimes more. There is, in truth, no cheap version of needing constant care. There is only the question of who pays, and how, and whether the family prepared for it or was ambushed by it. Here is where the dangerous assumptions come in, and I need you to pay close attention, because these misunderstandings ruin families. Most people quietly assume that when the time comes, something will cover this. They assume their regular health coverage will pay for it. In general, it does not. The health coverage that carries most people through retirement is designed for medical treatment, for doctors and hospitals, not for long-term custodial care, the daily help with living. It typically covers only very limited, short-term situations, and then it stops, right when the long, expensive road is just beginning. Families discover this at the worst possible moment, when they are already in crisis, already frightened, and suddenly learning that the coverage they counted on their whole lives simply does not apply to the one thing now bearing down on them. Let me speak to you directly for a moment, because I know this is heavy, and I know some of you are watching this with a specific face in your mind, a spouse, a parent, or a fear about yourself. I am not telling you this to frighten you into despair. I am telling you because knowledge, here, is genuinely protective, and because the families who look at this early have real, meaningful options, while the families who look away until the crisis hits are often left with almost none. That difference between looking early and looking away is the entire reason this channel exists. So subscribe and stay with me, because now we come to the rule that decides which of those two families you will be. So if regular health coverage does not pay for long-term care, what does? Broadly, there are three ways people pay. The first is out of their own pocket, simply paying the enormous cost from their savings until, for many, the savings are gone. The second is private long-term care insurance, a policy bought years in advance specifically to cover this cost. And the third is the government program of last resort, the one designed for those who have few remaining assets, which does pay for long-term care, but only once a person has spent down almost everything they own to qualify. And it is inside that third path that the trap lives, the rule I promised you. Because people understandably think, well, if that program will pay once my assets are low enough, I will simply give my money and my house to my children to protect it, and then qualify. It sounds clever. It is in fact one of the most dangerous misunderstandings in this entire area, and here is why. The program has what is often called a look back. When you apply, they look back over a period of years at everything you gave away. Any money or property you transferred for less than its true value during that look-back window can trigger a penalty, a period of time during which you are disqualified from receiving help, even though your assets are now gone. Think about how devastating that is. A family, trying to do the right thing, gives the house to the children to protect it, and then the crisis comes, and they apply for help, and they are told, because of what you gave away, you must wait, disqualified, during the exact months or years you most desperately need care. The money is gone, given away. The help is blocked by the penalty, and the family is caught in the worst possible place, with neither. This is why timing is everything, and why waiting is so catastrophic. The moves that can genuinely protect a family from this must generally be made long before the crisis, outside that look-back window, with careful, professional, entirely legal planning. The family that sits down years in advance, while everyone is healthy, has real options to protect assets properly and lawfully. The family that waits until Frank is already ill, until the care is already needed, finds that the look-back has closed most of those doors, and that the clumsy last-minute attempt to give everything away only makes things worse. Early, there are options. Late, there is mostly just loss. I want to be very clear about one thing here, because people mishear this, and it matters enormously. I am not telling you to give your money away to qualify for a government program. That is not the lesson, and done wrong it is a disaster, as you have just seen. The lesson is the opposite. It is that this entire area is governed by rules with long time horizons, rules that reward foresight and punish panic, and that the only way to be on the right side of them is to understand them early and to act with proper professional guidance in the open, lawfully, long before you are in crisis. The families who try to be clever at the last minute almost always harm themselves. The families who plan honestly and early are the ones who end up protected. This is not about gaming a system. It is about not being ambushed by one. And there is a deeper reason the last-minute approach fails, beyond just the penalty. When you give your house and savings to your children to shield them, you are also giving up control of them. If a child divorces, is sued, falls into debt, or simply makes a poor decision, the assets you handed over can be lost entirely, no longer yours to protect you at all. So the panicked giveaway does not only trigger the penalty, it can also expose everything you worked for to risks you never imagined, in the lives of the very people you were trying to help. This is exactly why proper planning is done through careful, lawful structures with a professional, and never through a frightened transfer scribbled out in the shadow of a crisis. Now let me talk about what the careful families actually did, honestly and without overpromising. The first approach is to plan ahead with the right professional. There is an entire field of professionals who specialize in exactly this kind of planning, in protecting a family's assets legally and in advance, well outside the look-back window. The families who saw this danger early, in their 60s, often sat down with such a professional and put careful, lawful protections in place, years before they were ever needed. This is the single most powerful thing most people can do, and it is powerful precisely because it is early. The second approach is insurance, bought in advance, to cover the cost so that savings never have to be drained in the first place. This kind of coverage has become more complicated and more expensive over the years, and it is not right for everyone, and the details truly matter. so it demands careful, unbiased advice. But for some families, especially those with savings worth protecting but not limitless, it can be the very thing that keeps a long illness from becoming a financial catastrophe. It is worth understanding, early, whether it fits your situation, while you are still healthy enough to qualify for it at a reasonable cost. And the third approach, woven through all of this, is the one I care about most, because it is about a person, not money. Protect the healthy spouse. In a couple, when one person needs years of ruinously expensive care, the greatest danger is not only that the money is lost, it is that the healthy spouse, the one who may live many more years, is left destitute by the cost of caring for the other. Good planning in this area is, at its heart, about making sure that caring for one spouse does not condemn the other to poverty. There are protections designed specifically for this, for the spouse who remains, and understanding them in advance can be the difference between a surviving spouse who is secure and one who is ruined. That, more than any asset, is what careful planning here is really trying to save. I want to pause on that, because if you are part of a couple, this is the heart of it for you. Picture the two of you. Now picture the harder truth that one of you will very likely need significant care before the other, and that the one giving the care and watching the savings drain away to pay for it will be the one left behind to live for years afterward on whatever remains. Without planning, those years can be spent in a poverty that a lifetime of work should never have led to. With planning, the healthy spouse is protected and can grieve and go on without also facing ruin. If that is a fear that has ever crossed your mind in the quiet of the night, then I want you to know that it is not only a fear, it is a solvable problem, but only if it is faced early. These are exactly the conversations this channel exists to make easier. So subscribe, and let me keep bringing the hardest ones into the light with you. Let me bring Frank and Rosemary back, because their story is not only a warning, it also holds the lesson. When Frank's illness became clear, they were, at first, in that worst of all places, frightened and unprepared. But they were fortunate in one respect. They found their way to a professional who specialized in this, and although they had waited longer than would have been ideal, there were still some protections that could be put in place, particularly for Rosemary. It was harder and less complete than it would have been had they planned years earlier. Some options were already gone, but because they finally acted, and acted with proper guidance rather than a panicked last-minute giveaway, Rosemary was not left with nothing. She was protected enough to live out her own years with dignity. It was not the best case. The best case would have been planning a decade before, but it was so much better than the alternative that so many families fall into, the alternative of doing nothing, understanding nothing, until everything is lost. So let's bring it all together. Long-term care is common, it is ruinously expensive, and the regular health coverage most people rely on generally will not pay for it. There are three paths: paying out of pocket until the money is gone, private insurance bought in advance, and the government program of last resort. And inside that last path lives the look-back rule, which punishes families who give away assets too late, blocking help at the very moment they need it most. The families who survive this well are almost always the ones who looked at it early, who planned years in advance with the right professional, who considered insurance while they were still healthy, and who, above all, made sure that caring for one spouse would never destroy the other. It is, above all, a decision. The decision to look at the hardest thing early, while you still have the power to act, rather than looking away until the choice is taken from you, and almost no one makes it in time. Before you go, tell me something in the comments. And be gentle with yourself. Have you and your family ever actually talked out loud about what would happen if one of you needed years of care? Most families never do, because it is frightening and painful to face. But the ones who face it early are the ones who stay protected. If this gave you the push to finally have that conversation, then it did its job. And if you want the rest of these, the decisions that define your retirement, and the ones you can't undo, then subscribe and stay with me. There is a new file every week. The next one is about a mistake that feels generous and loving in the moment, and quietly damages the very people it is meant to help. It is about giving money to your children the wrong way, at the wrong time, and how even the most loving parents can hurt their family and their own security without ever realizing it. Take your time with these. They are the decisions of a lifetime, and a lifetime of work has earned them your patience.